So, Susan, great to have you here. I just wanted to be able to start and just ask you a bit about, you've had such an interesting career in general so far with being involved with Siri. You've also done, I think, a bunch of other things that people don't really know about with bank machines and airplanes. And, I would just love to just start at the and give people more of an understanding as to how did you get into voice acting in the beginning? Was this always the career choice you wanted to go on? Was this your dream as a kid? Like, how did this all begin?
Well, have always been a musician and a singer,
Mhm.
and I used to do a lot of jingle singing back in the days when they would write, jingles for commercials.
Mhm.
And one day when I was at the studio, the voice actor didn't show up to read the copy for the spot I had been singing for. And so the owner of the studio said, Susan, you don't have an accent. Come over here and read this copy. So I went, oh, ding, ding, ding. This is a new way for, something new. And so I got a voice coach and
Mhm.
then a talent agent and went on from
Huh.
there.
It's so funny how like you really got into it, I guess, by chance or by luck,
Yes. Yeah,
essentially.
it was pretty much kind of an accident. Yeah.
That's so funny. Yeah, I mean, voice acting. So you were into music. It kind of made sense because that was it's there's similarities between between the two, of course. Um, yeah, I mean, I think like as you progressed, of course, the Siri phase did happen, but you just in voice acting, like, where were some of your initial roles in voice acting? Like, what did you initially do?
Well, because I've been based in Atlanta this whole time, most of the stuff that I did wasn't necessarily national spots,
Hmm.
but I did a lot of, well-known spots, McDonald's and
Yeah.
IBM and things like that. And I did a lot of narrations and things for, documentaries and for different
Mhm.
corporations and stuff. And I've always done a lot of messaging too, like,
Huh.
thanks for calling, please press one.
Yeah. No, I think that's definitely interesting. Like that you've tried multiple different avenues, and this career path was something that came up a bit later. You clearly have a voice for it, so it definitely made sense. But you never thought of this before the music, what during the music phase, like you never thought of voice acting. It just kind of just happened to be, and you've had a proclivity for it.
Well, we're talking about the 70s now,
Right.
1970s. And at that point in time, voiceover wasn't the thing that it is now. It's become this big
Mhm.
thing. They have voiceover conferences and,
Yeah.
voiceover coaching and everything like that. And in the past, there were voice actors and there was
Hmm.
voice acting being done, but it wasn't such a big deal. I mean, it
Yeah.
wasn't something that people, thought, oh, I want to grow up and do that. And so it was an accidental thing, but I've really enjoyed it. It's
Mhm.
been a lot of fun.
Why do you think some of these companies have chose you for a specific role? Is it something about your voice in particular? Is it about the way, like your tone? Like what? Why do you think?
I really don't know. I guess it's just that I sound somewhat authoritative, but not too unfriendly, authoritative. So yeah, I don't know. It's really hard to say. I mean, because I can put on a lot of different sounds,
Hmm.
so but I think just
Yeah.
my natural speaking voice seems to lend itself for, that type of thing.
Hmm. So, clearly you were picked by Apple. They liked something about your voice. Did you know that you were working for Apple at the time when you were doing the recordings? Was it just, oh, you're working for some client? Were you aware of that?
I was only aware of working for, there's a company that I've been doing messaging for decades, and I was working
Mhm.
through them as a liaison company to this company
Okay.
called Scansoft, which became
Yeah.
Nuance, which Apple, because they bought so many voices from them, ended up buying Nuance too, I think.
Uh-huh.
Don't quote me on that, but
Yeah.
so I don't know who chose my voice. I like to think it was Steve Jobs because he was very involved in this developing the Siri app. That was
Right.
sort of his baby. And the interesting
Mhm.
thing is, when he can't had got cancer and he died, but he didn't go until after Siri made her appearance on the iPhone 4S. So at least he got to see, Siri come to fruition. So that
Mm.
I'm sure that was a good thing for him.
Did you ever get to speak with Steve Jobs about Siri at all or meet him?
No,
Yeah. Yeah.
no, no.
Yeah. Were you always like a somebody who loved Apple products? I mean, are you into technology at all, or was it like did you have a proclivity for Apple?
No, I'm really, really not a techie person, but
Hmm.
somehow I think because my husband and I are both musicians and I'm somewhat artistic, we always gravitated towards Macs as opposed to,
Right.
you know, the Microsoft stuff.
Well,
And but something interesting that I'm sure your audience will appreciate. Yesterday, I was taking a basket of laundry into the kitchen to do the laundry. My iPhone had been on the top of the basket, and I was going to take it out and put it on the table, of course, which I forgot to do, and it fell down to the bottom of the basket. Subsequently, it made an entire wash cycle in the washer,
oh
in
no.
the washing machine. And all this is going on. I'm thinking, where did I put my iPhone? And so I asked my husband, I said, call my number. So he
Mm.
called my number and I said, where's that come from? Uh-oh. I reached in, totally
Oh
fine.
no.
Nothing wrong with it at all.
Okay, that's
So
good.
people, if you feel compelled to wash your iPhone, it's okay.
Well, now they're like waterproof, right?
Pretty
Yeah,
strange.
it definitely is. It's really been interesting because you said I read an article that you mentioned 2 years after after people, after Siri was out, you really announced you became Siri. Like, why did you wait so long? And also, like, what was the process like when you found out? I think I read somewhere that somebody told you didn't even know that you were on all these different iPhones, and someone told
Yes.
you about it. What
Yeah.
was that
Someone
like?
emailed me and said, on October 4th, 2011, when Siri appeared, yes, she's a Libra. And they said, "Hey, we're playing around with this new iPhone app. Isn't this you?" And I went, "What?" So I went on the Apple site and listened, and I was absolutely horrified.
Oh,
Horrified.
really?
Yes, because obviously my voice was going to be on millions and millions of these
Yeah.
devices, and they had not paid me.
Mm.
And so this did not make me happy at all. And so I was thinking about it, trying to figure it took me 2 whole years to reveal myself because I couldn't really decide what I wanted to do about it. It's one of those life lessons where you kind of go, oh, wow, well, what do I do about this? I mean, I certainly
Hmm.
can't sue Apple,
Right.
and
So
I had
they
signed
never paid
something.
you?
I'm
They
sorry?
ne they never paid you. You found out and it was so you decided after 2 years because they didn't pay you during that 2 year period, you're saying basically.
Right. They didn't pay me ever.
They didn't pay you
They
ever.
haven't acknowledged me ever.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
The only person that acknowledged me was the wonderful Steve Wozniak, who was Steve
Hmm.
Jobs's business partner and the guy that actually built the computers. I was at a
Hmm.
conference with him, and he's the one that helped me spin the Siri thing very much in my favor by encouraging me to become a speaker.
Mm.
Because he called me up on stage. He was the the keynote speaker, and he called me up on stage and he said, "You're really good on stage, and you ought to do this." And so I
Hmm.
thought, I should. So I went home and started writing a presentation. But that was the thing. I was really kind of horrified. There were four original Siri voices,
Hmm.
and I've met two of the other three.
Okay.
And Karen Jacobson is the Australian voice. She lives in New York.
Hmm.
And John Briggs, very famous BBC announcer,
Okay.
who was Daniel. That was the name of Siri in England. And we all had the same experience. We, like in the early to mid 2000s, we did
Hmm.
all this crazy recording. And it was very crazy because all of the phrases and sentences we had to read were constructed solely to get all of the sound combinations in the language. So a lot of the stuff we read was totally nonsensical, very
Yeah.
repetitious, incredibly tedious.
Uh-huh.
And so while we were doing all of this, we just knew that we were working for nuance. We didn't know where all of this stuff was going to
Hmm.
end up. So 6 years later, when all of a sudden Siri arrives, we're going,
Huh.
what? So this is what I was doing. Okay, we get it now. One more for the corporations.
But Nuance paid you, right?
Nuance paid me, yes. Yes,
Okay.
I got
So
paid
that's
for the
good.
recordings. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
But
nice.
see that what people don't realize is yes, it was exciting that I was chosen. Yes, I was very flattered that I was chosen. But what
Yeah.
you don't understand is that, if my voice is all over the place on people's telephone messaging and that kind of thing, they're not
Yeah.
going to really notice my voice because with that type of thing,
It's more generic.
people are listening for information. They're not
Hmm.
listening to the voice. But if suddenly that voice becomes a persona, this character
Yeah.
that you're carrying around in your pocket and you talk to about 900 times a day, you get used to hearing that voice. And I
Hmm.
really do think that that impacted, my voiceover career. But it could have been a lot of other things too. So I mean, I'm not pointing blame anywhere. What I'm saying is that it was a turning point in my life.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I'm sure. I mean, it definitely makes a lot of sense to go to the public speaking route. I mean, probably many people are fascinated by your story.
Yeah.
It's such an interesting story.
Yeah.
So, I mean, are you familiar at all with ChatGPT and OpenAI and what they're
Yes.
doing?
Yes.
Uh,
Somewhat familiar.
how do you think like the personal assistant's gonna evolve? Like, do you think it's gonna still be like this voice-based assistant like we're seeing with Siri and Alexa?
It's really hard to say. It's really hard to say, but I do know they're going to keep working on that algorithm until they get it sounding like a human.
Yep.
And us humans are going to be sitting around twiddling our thumbs. I don't know what we're going to do for work. The AIs are going to have all the work.
Susan, when Siri came out, like people were so shocked at how realistic the voice sounded. Like it sounded like a human being, like in
Hmm.
terms of how it was parsed together, all the words.
Hmm.
Did that shock you at all? Were you like, wow, this is really good? Like how like this sounds like me? Like it really sounds like a real person.
Well, the original Siri on the very first,
Hmm.
iPhone with the Siri, she sounded a little bumpy. She sounded quite, computerish.
Uh-huh.
But it was an amazing feat. I mean, it really was. It was just a game changer. And it didn't sound exactly like my voice.
Yeah.
It's I think that they did a lot of, manipulation of the voice and adding this and that to it.
Hmm.
It wasn't exactly my voice. But it also could have been because I was reading those scripts 4 hours a day, 5 days
Yeah.
a week. And so probably my voice was a little bit deeper doing those sessions than any other time. That's why Siri sounds more like that.
Is that like a typical voice acting job? Is that how intense it is? Was this was much more intense? I mean, 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. That's a commitment. That's like half
Yeah,
your work.
yeah. Those of us that do that type of recording, like messaging and, informational type of things that I can remember back in the day, I used to read books for Random House, and there
Hmm.
would just be thousands of them, you know. And that aspect of voiceover is incredibly tedious, but there are other really
Hmm.
cool things about, radio and TV commercials and animation. And yeah, there's a lot of different aspects. There are a lot of different aspects to the voiceover business.
Have you ever met the voice of Alexa, the lady who does
No,
that?
but I've met her on via Zoom, and I know who she is. And
Okay, so you
yeah,
met her once.
yeah.
What
Yeah,
was that
yeah.
like? Is it
I met
just
her through Zoom. She's great.
crazy?
She's
She's
great.
great.
She's just a regular voice actor. But the problem is that, she had the positive aspect of being paid for what she did.
Hmm. Uh-huh.
But she also has a non-disclosure agreement, even though some guy, writing a book,
Like
outed
Lee.
her.
Yeah.
So people do know who she is, but she can't really talk
Mhm.
about it.
And you mean, Susan, by getting paid, you mean like getting paid from the company directly via like a royalty or something like that? Like, what do you mean specifically?
Yeah, getting paid for just having, I mean, probably just one lump sum for having the voice on that.
Right.
Because as I said before, you get used to hearing that voice and you know that voice. And so it's not
Right.
going to be as readily usable for
Hmm.
companies to use that voice in a big paying commercial or anything like that
Yeah.
today. So those of us who didn't get paid, it
Mhm.
was really not a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would have
So
been.
when you did the reveal and people found out like Susan is Siri, how did that change your life and your career? Like, did all these brands start reaching out to you like, hey, we'd love to have you do this voiceover? I mean, I know you said you started a speaking career essentially, but was it a big in terms of like voice acting opportunities? Did that really help you a lot?
No, it didn't really do much
Not at
for the
all.
voice acting. It did
Huh.
a lot for, I mean, the first few weeks, I was just on, all over TV and radio. I did hundreds of interviews
Yeah.
and that sort of thing. And that was nice because it got my name out there. And
Hmm.
I was able to capitalize a bit on that when I decided to start doing speaker events. And I have two wonderful agents in Los Angeles at
Hmm.
Fox, and they jumped in because they're mostly of just a voiceover agency, but they really jumped in there and helped me out with the speaking events.
That's very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so like, what would I mean? If you could like name a couple of things, like what are some places like maybe people don't know that your voice is in, like stuff like maybe yeah, places like your voice is in now that people may not know it's you, like Delta Airlines, for example. I think you did something
Mhm.
that was like a pre-boarding like voiceover.
Yeah,
Like, what
I'm
are some
still in
places?
the Atlanta airport, and in fact, all Delta Airlines gates worldwide, you know.
Really?
I'm sorry, you are in aisle Z.
That's actually great. Yeah. So Delta, and do you still like have any bank like your voice in on any bank machines?
I don't think so, but sometimes because of the recordings that I did for Nuance, sometimes my voice shows up in places where that I have no knowledge of it.
Uh-huh.
Because they bypass me totally. Just get the voice from Nuance. So I always tell my friends, I said, if you're watching regular TV, listen out for my voice, and if you hear my
Yeah.
voice, let me know. My agents might be able to get me paid for it.
So when you started out with the teller bank opportunity, right?
Mhm.
That was something like so they really used your voice in a strategic way. It was welcoming people to using these types of banking machines. They weren't necessarily as into that at the time. So voice acting really plays an important it can play an important role in accessibility to things.
Yeah, but with the Tilly the Teller thing, I was singing the jingle. It was Tilly the
Mhm.
all-time teller, the jingle.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that got her out there. What happened is that in the late 70s, when they were trying to introduce ATMs,
Mhm.
people weren't buying it. They would not put money in this machine to say,
Mhm.
no, we are not doing that. And so they had to put a nice smiley face on the machine and make her look friendly, and they had to really sell it to get people to start using ATMs. So that was interesting.
Have you so when you talk to like let's say you're talking to your iPhone, right? Like originally when with Siri, but did it ever bother you? Like or was it just exciting every time? Like, oh wow, like my voice made it on the phone. Like or was it kind of annoying that you like you
Yeah,
kept
well, it wasn't annoying. It was kind of creepy. So
it's
I
creepy.
never talked to Siri when she had my voice. I don't really talk to her much now because a lot of times, it's funny. A lot of times she doesn't understand what we say.
Hmm.
For me, it's just a lot easier just to look it up.
I mean when it came
She's good
out,
with phone numbers.
yeah. When it came out, it was so I mean it was just such an interesting thing. Like no one was really doing anything like that. There was no
Right.
like personal voice
Yeah, she
assistant.
was the first. Yeah, she was
He
the
was the
first.
first.
But the interesting thing about the original Siri is that she had a personality. She
Uh-huh.
really did. She had a sense of humor and she could be kind of snarky,
Hmm.
and a lot of times people would talk to Siri just to see what she was going to say.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time that I spoke to Siri and I said, "Hi Siri, what are you doing?" And she very disgustedly answered, "I'm talking to you." Oh, sorry, Siri, didn't mean to bother you.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's been an interesting progression we've seen with voice assistants and where they're heading now. I mean, now it's like we have devices in our homes, the Alexa, people are
Hmm.
talking to them. Do you have an Alexa? Do you use the Alexa at all? Nope,
No,
not into it.
nope. No, I'm going to do whatever I possibly can to not talk to machines.
Uh, so, what are your plans like going forward? You're in the voice acting space. Are you interested in doing more things like the personal assistant stuff? Do you want to continue doing more like the jingle or, like what are your future plans?
Well, a lot of the reason that I don't do as much as I work as I was doing is because I'm a lot older than most of the people doing this stuff. And
Mhm.
even, I'm like twice the age of most of the people in charge. So they don't just naturally think of me, for a
Mhm.
project. So for me personally, I just like to do any kind of work because the nice thing about it is, unless you're involved in a huge project like the Nuance projects that became the virtual assistants, every job is different,
Mhm.
and you get to work with different people. And for me, it used to be a lot more fun when we all used to go into the studios together and you'd be there with other voice actors and we're all
Mhm.
actors and artistic people, and so that was really fun. But
Yeah.
now we're just all home in our booths. Which has its advantages, we save a lot on gasoline that way.
100%.
Yeah.
Do you think like I mean, you started out with you did the Siri opportunity. Do you think you've gained more value from talking about it publicly because you didn't get paid than you would have getting paid and doing an NDA? Like, do you think it worked out for the better overall?
I think it definitely worked out for the better because I've had some really unique experiences because of Siri. I mean, my
Yeah.
husband and I both got to travel to Croatia for a
Okay.
big voiceover conference. We went to Australia. We went to Israel. I mean,
Mm,
we've had these
right.
amazing opportunities because of that. And then I've traveled all over the United States doing different Siri appearances and
Mm,
things. So I'm very grateful for it. And it's something like, a lot of other people at my age are, thinking about retiring or just,
right.
sitting on the porch or something. And, and I'm still working, which I love. So
Yeah. Well, if you do what you love, you might as well not stop.
that's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, as a kid, did you ever think you would wind up going this direction? Like, I mean, you said music you started out in, but like to do this voice assistant where arguably like hundreds of millions of people have, maybe a billion plus have heard your voice all around the world. There's very few people that even exist that I guess yeah, have spread their influence, I guess, that far.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite
As a
that.
kid, absolutely not. In fact, I wasn't even sure that I would be a musician. I mean, I knew that I was musical,
Uh-huh.
but I didn't really think that I would get to the level of being able to make that a career.
Hmm.
So, no, it all kind of sort of happened very naturally. It's just kind of
Yeah.
a natural progression of things.
What are your favorite like Siri expressions? Like I know you mentioned that one initially from your first experience, but what are some of your favorite ones?
Oh, I she's so frustrating sometimes when she doesn't understand what you say or she doesn't really have an answer for you. I'm sorry, but I can't answer that question. But Siri, you're Siri. You're supposed to know everything.
Yeah, like everything. So do you have like insight into where the name, like the Siri name came from? Like how did that happen?
Well, I've heard two stories, and this is one of the things
Mhm.
I talk about in my presentation. Apple didn't really create Siri. They
Yeah.
purchased the app and developed it and everything, but there were three engineers that developed Siri, one of whom was a guy named Dag Kitlaus from
Okay.
Norway. And
Yeah.
apparently, he and his wife were expecting a baby during the time he was working on the app, and they were going to
Mhm.
name the baby Siri. But the
Huh.
baby turned out to be a boy, so
Okay.
the app got the name instead. Now, the other story I've heard is that Siri is just an acronym for speech interpretation recognition interface.
Yeah, I like the first one better.
Yes, yeah, yeah. We'll go with the better story.
Yeah, I mean, so overall you've enjoyed like the voice acting career. You've enjoyed being Siri.
Oh,
Like that's
very
something
much. Yeah, very
very
much
much a
so.
positive.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's quite an interesting thing to be this voice assistant, especially when it's becoming more and more important. And I think it's going to progress much more with AI, like
Hmm.
you're talking about
Hmm.
before. Like voice assistants are going to be even more important, and essentially you were the start of the industry. You
Well,
know,
when I first came out as the voice of Sierra, I heard from a lot of disabled people, which was pretty cool. And they
hmm,
said we just love being able to talk to Siri. We don't have to type everything in, and we can
yeah,
hear Siri and ask her the questions and to get the answers we need.
hmm,
So it's just it's just been entirely positive. The only negative thing is that Apple never paid for it. That's it. That's it.
hmm.
So.
I guess it's just their style or something.
Yeah, well, Tim Cook can have another nice, really long vacation.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty much most of what I wanted to cover. Um, does anyone ever ask you if you know the answers to everything? Like, do people kind of play jokes like on the
Well,
Siri
sometimes
aspect?
they'll
Like,
ask me, and I'll just come up with some ridiculous answer. I know, but
that's
I
good.
don't want to tell you.
I mean, the personality was really a reason why people use the phone much
Oh
more in the
yeah,
beginning.
because people
Yeah,
would talk to Siri just to hear the silly thing she would say back. And
yeah.
she was, yeah,
I remember doing that. It was great.
yeah,
It was a really great time.
yeah.
Yeah. Could you say a couple things just in like the Siri voice? Just
It
like, is that,
depends. What do you want me to say? I can't do
um,
any advertising without telling my agent because I
yeah,
think
nothing
it's so
advertising related. Just like,
bad.
yeah, just some like, I don't know, just some like typical phrases like, I don't know, like what's the weather today?
Why don't you look outside, Ben? Why
He's
don't you
good.
just look out the window?
It looks sunny to me.
There you go.
How far is it from Atlanta to New York?
It is a long way. It is about 12 hours of driving,
Do
possibly
you,
more.
do you like Alexa? Is Alexa nice to you?
Alexa and I are fierce enemies. No, I'm kidding. No, I like Alexa a lot.
Nice. Yeah. No, I think it's really interesting. Like, you started out this career that went it was one direction, it completely changed, and then one of the most negative could have been negative aspects of you not getting paid turned to the one of the most positive aspects,
Hmm.
potentially and it's completely changed your life. You traveled to all these new places. I'm sure
Yep.
met tons of interesting people,
Hmm.
seen new things.
Hmm.
It's so in many ways it was a positive and a blessing.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. Do you think any of your kids are going to follow, or in this direction, or any family members?
I have one son, and I don't think he's going to, but I wish that he had because he's gifted that way.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there something you think is genetic, like were any of your parents, did they have voice?
No, no, my parents,
Yeah.
weren't musical, and they weren't, yeah, they didn't weren't in that business at all. Yeah. My mom was a nurse, my dad was a salesman. But
Yeah.
somewhere there was that there was a lot of music in my family. My grandmother was
Mhm.
musical, and a couple of my aunts were really musical. So those genes were, you know,
Yeah. And you can do all different types of voices.
I
Like, can you also do?
can. I
You do?
can. I can do lots. And I can talk like this, darling. I do it all. I'm an event planner, darling, and I do it all. Weddings, bar mitzvahs, birthday parties. Call me, darling.
That's so fascinating. So you really can just you can do like impersonations and a wide
I
range
can't
of.
really do impersonations of, real people. I can do a lot of different accents and characters if I can listen to the person long enough and hear it, so I've got a good ear.
Huh.
But
Yeah.